Hey, good morning, guys. This is Dr. Brenden Cochran from Interactive Health Clinic. Hope everybody's morning's going well. Today, I wanted to talk about three big topics, some new things that have come out. And one of them not so new, but just to bring to your attention why it's especially important. So first thing we're going to talk about, very, very important. The most important thing you can do based on all the other recommendations that I told you about foods, supplements, etc., is keep yourself well hydrated. So this means drink water, right? We talked about in earlier videos why you shouldn't have a lot of sugar, how that decreases the function of your white blood cells. But being hydrated is especially important so all of these nutrients that you're taking can get to the cellular level. Imagine that when you're dehydrated, things are more like sludge versus hydrated, things are well lubricated and nutrients are able to move in and out of cells. If you have an unhydrated cell, imagine a raisin versus a hydrated cell looks like a grape. So that means drink water. And this is not tap water. Now research shows, this is filtered tap water is adequate. This is not bottled water. Research shows that most of the bottled water that is currently out there is crap, junk, okay? It has chlorine in it. They don't filter it well. They actually have microbial growth that can be found in there. So bottled water is not necessarily the best, plus it leaches plastics into your water over time. So bottled water is not good. Tap water. Tap water's fine, but make sure you have a really good filtration system on there so it can catch things like the chlorine, jet fuels called perchlorates, which interfere with your hormones. Also making sure that if there are little microbes that occasionally get in there, they can be filtered out as well, because chlorine doesn't kill everything that's found in your water supply. Not to mention there can be a lot of silt products that can also get into your water. So if you ever change the filter like we do at our house, change the filter and the thing looks nasty, and I'm like, wow, I'm grateful I'm not drinking that every day. So how much water do you need? Half your body weight in ounces. So you should be drinking and peeing and drinking and peeing and drinking and peeing. Now remember, when you get 5% dehydrated, that's a 25% reduction in your energy levels. So one of the magical things when we give people IV nutrients is we're hydrating them. We're immediately hydrating them so they feel really well with that amount of water in their system. So please make sure you're staying hydrated well throughout this. It's really important to keep your mucous membranes hydrated as well, so that way you don't have an infection increase as well. Next topic, back to masks, because it's this ongoing evolution. How do I make my own mask? Remember we talked about that? I gave you some ideas of some material that possibly would work. Well, there's a company that's down in California that basically did the testing for us. They tested coffee filters, they tested cotton fabric, they tested everything. And guess what? That cotton fabric that we saw on TV with the Surgeon General, or he folded up a towel, put it on your face, 60% particle reduction, which is better than nothing. However, we can do better than that, right? We're good at engineering, and we have ingenuity to get things done, right? We saw this with Apollo 13 when we had to create new filter and new oxygen systems when people were broken down up in space. We can do a lot better than a t-shirt, right? And these guys did. Awesome thing. What they did is they took polyester hydro knit, which is found in those disposable shop towels that you get at like the auto parts stores or the hardware stores. They put 2 layers together and they tested it, and it filtered out 93% of the particles, as small as 0.3 microns. That's pretty much an N95 mask, because remember, N95 stands for 95% particle reduction. So there's a very cheap way to make your own mask that's pretty much the same as N95. And I'll give you a link at the bottom of this video to show you how you can make your own. I'll give it right to that specific company that discovered that. So awesome guy, awesome idea, guys. Very cheap, easy thing to do, and you can find it readily. Okay. Now, last thing. This is very, very interesting. It's a new theory. The last 3 to 5 days of what is actually going on with this coronavirus when it starts to progress and causes people to basically starve of oxygen. And the new theory is you have hypoxia, which means low oxygen, because the virus is actually entering your red blood cells and binding these oxygen carrying centers where iron sits. They're called heme groups. And it basically kicks the iron out of the red blood cell, and then you don't have any iron in the red blood cell, so you can't carry your oxygen very well. Well, what this also does is when iron gets kicked out of the red blood cell, iron's very oxidative, right? It destroys things if it's floating around. So iron running around in the lungs is not very good because the lungs have a very, very poor antioxidant system already. Now you have all this oxidative damage, and you have red blood cells that can't carry oxygen properly. So what this does is it makes a person starve of oxygen, which is what we're seeing clinically with people. So one of the theories that they're looking at is, is a ventilator really going to help a person in that severe of a state? And the answer may be no, and it may be dependent on what pressure. So some of the higher pressure settings on the ventilators may not work as some of the lower settings on a ventilator system. It may also not be a problem with the lungs. It may be a blood disease problem, which if that was the case, then you'd have to actually give people transfusions to replace those red blood cells. Another interesting thing of why this theory stands strong is when we take a picture of people's lungs, we see what are called bilateral. Both lungs have these ground glass opacies on the imaging. And that's especially important because usually when we see regular pneumonia, we see a consolidation in one area, meaning we have an infection in one lung, and then it might be in another lobe of that lung. But we don't often see it in both lungs. So if you got, say, pneumonia from the flu or pneumonia from some other respiratory bug, usually we see consolidation in a specific area of the lung, not this perfectly symmetrical, opaque concentration on both sides. So that's also another argument for this theory and why it works. Final thing is earlier in the week, a lot of people started reporting that one of the other symptoms that we see with people with coronavirus is they get neuropsychiatric symptoms where they have neurological disease also. And one of the first complaints was, well, is this virus getting into the brain tissue or affecting the nerves? Still a possible theory. But with this specific theory, the patients who are recovering have something, this is a big terminology, it's called leukoencephalopathy. And leukoencephalopathy is basically where your nerves that have this little sheath covering them, almost like your electric line or your cable on the outside that insulates it, that's actually dying. And then, therefore, it's exposing the cable so you don't get great firing rate or conductance. And the reason that it's dying is actually we don't have enough oxygen getting to that tissue to sustain that myelin. So when that happens and we have weird firing patterns in the brain, short circuits, which creates that neuropsychiatric syndrome that people have. It's literally the brain is not getting enough oxygen and you're having brain injuries because of that. So it's a very, very interesting theory, and that would be one of the reasons why we think something like hydroxychloroquine may work, because malaria actually does the same thing. It gets into your red blood cells, and it basically causes problems so your red blood cells can't carry oxygen properly, and then you could die of malaria if it went so far. So one of the theories of what could work is, again, this drug called hydroxychloroquine that most people are now familiar with. If it's given early enough with zinc, because remember it is a zinc ionophore, it can actually disrupt the replication of the virus that would be able to get into the red blood cell. Now, we mentioned some natural agents that also do that too. Quercetin, EGCG, which is from green tea, and even resveratrol, which comes from grapes, and can also do that zinc ionophore process. The key is it seems like if we get it early we can disrupt that. Now, the thing with this theory that doesn't quite add up yet that we don't have is the virus must be moving into the red blood cell, because there's no way that it can actually replicate in the red blood cell, because red blood cells don't have the hardware to take viral information and crank out new viruses. So we don't have that answered quite yet. But it's a very interesting theory, and it may be actually a blood disease versus what we previously thought where it was an infection in the lungs. All right, guys. Hope you guys like this video. Please share at least to one person. These videos, I think, can have a profound difference on somebody in your family or your friends. So please at least share to one person. Hit my like. We have a YouTube channel, so subscribe to that. Hit the like button. And if you have topics you want me to talk about, please, by all means, put them in the comment section. All right. Have a good day. Bye.